Hello, hello to each and every one of you in your respective places. I am just beyond over the moon excited today. You may say, oh, that's all the time. And that is true. Some days I'm higher than others. But today I am just delighted to have um, what I will say a blossoming friendship with a familiar face. And we had a chance to cross some paths a couple years ago, and we're going to get more into that. But I want to welcome each of you to another segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time. I am your host, Nikki Roach, and it is always a joy, always a pleasure to bring you new information. Those of you new to the platform, this is a space where we talk about leadership excellence and leadership accidents. And with that, we realize that success is a term that everybody is scraping and scrambling for. But I always press pause and say, and who's defining this word of success for you? Make sure you're defining that for yourself. And so my guest today, I'm just delighted to have, because she has done just that. She has defined success as she thought it should be defined, not according to the world. But I'm sure that at some point, we may have had this same dance. We were dancing to the same tune in regards to kind of taking the tune up from others, but then opted to say, hey, I'm going to change this channel. Miss Krystal, how are you?
Hey, Nikki, I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am beyond well today, and just seeing your face has just lit my fire even the more.
100%. Thank you for that phenomenal introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here with you.
Yes, and just let me give the listening audience a little information. Krystal Weigl is a lawyer, writer, wellness enthusiast. Her mission is to make the law more approachable, accessible, and useful for those it is meant to protect. She's launched countless of initiatives, contributed hundreds of pro bono hours, and volunteered with dozens of organizations in pursuit of this mission. Leveling the playing field is her passion project. In 2019, she didn't give me this tip, but I found it. Krystal was selected to Rising Stars, and this is a peer designation which is awarded only to a select number of accomplished attorneys in each state. Krystal was the one for our state, and this Rising Star selection process takes into account peer recognition, professional achievement, and legal practice and other factors. She's recently added author to her title, and she has penned a chapter, The Descendant's Hope, in the text, Living My Truth, Personal Reflections on the Impact of RBG's Legacy. How are you?
How could I be any better, really? Oh my gosh, I'm glowing. Thank you.
That's all you, though. That's all you. Nothing to do with me.
Yes. I am fantastic. I'm over the moon. I'm doing so many exciting things this year that you just so glowingly introduced. I'm also expecting my first daughter this fall, so that is another major shift coming up, and things are just fantastic over here. They really are.
I'm excited. Now, what would you say? Because I know you talk about things being exciting and having all of these different. I want to dive into some of these shifts and some of these contributions, and some of this work that you are just most passionate about. Where did this love and passion for law? Where did that surface from?
Oh, sure. Okay, so when I was 4 years old, I was selected Star of the Week in my and I had to write several things about myself, on including my future and what I was looking forward to the most. And my future at that time included law school, becoming a lawyer, and and making sure that I got into the best college that I could so that I could do all of those things. And I never strayed from that. I questioned it several times, mostly after I got here. But in my mind, since I was a child and continuing to today, lawyers are people who can make sure that the law protects people that it's meant to protect. And I get to live up to that privilege every day, which is really, in many ways, a dream come true for me.
And so, what was it that provided this exposure? Because even as a kid, being an attorney, a lawyer, was on the top of your list. What was the exposure to that?
Sure, yeah. When I was younger, one of the adults that I knew who really seemed to have it all together and to dress the part and to comfort other adults around me when they were struggling with trying to figure out some really intense issues was an attorney, and that was kind of my guiding light for a while. I didn't know this person very well, but I knew what he did and I knew how other people responded when he was talking. I knew that people felt comforted when he gave them direction on how to handle things. And that was that was what I needed to see. That was something that I thought, I think I can do that. And it became a goal pretty much immediately.
Just by observation?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Very interesting. Because I know a lot of times we will say, you know, that people are watching. You may be the only book that someone reads, whatever that book is, and then we'll say, be the example. Don't just don't talk about it, be about it. But this is a prime example of how someone from the distance had impact on your then present, but also your future. Very interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Now, yeah. Now, what would you say that you've had a pretty extensive career in law? What has been a high point for you? Because we talk about excellence and accidents. What's the space of excellence that you can share for us while you've been practicing?
Oh boy. Um, okay, well, I try very hard not to define my own success in
Uh
terms
huh.
of a classic win or a classic loss, a lesson learned. I I feel most successful and at my peak performance when I'm able to stop some of the pain that society can cause for people, and to be an active voice and an active advocate in bringing them a resolution. So a few years back here in St. Louis, there was a man who was tragically and wrongfully beaten to death in a holding cell. There were several employees of the city involved, and his family came to us because we had worked with them in the past, and we worked directly with his mother. My team and I did the workup of that case here in federal court in St. Louis. And the highest points that I recall feeling like I was performing at my fullest were when his mom would look at me and get a little bit calmer or a little bit more sure that she was being heard, or just a little bit more seen. And that I have never been honored to do something more powerful than that for anyone, including for myself.
It sounds like you have also identified, I know we use this word very loosely, but your superpower in regards to what makes you stand out. Because a lot of times when we find ourselves in our professions, we get so overwhelmed with trying to be the role instead of us showing up in the role.
Oh my gosh. What?
Meaning, like, how is it that I not hide in the role, but how do I shine through the role?
That is that is such an incredible articulation of that in this profession, as in many professions. There's a box that you go into. There's a template. There's a cookie cutter where they say, you know, directly or indirectly, you should behave this way. You kind of want to look this way. Certainly, you should dress this way. Your voice should be a little bit more like this. I honestly can't tell you. I've been training to be an attorney as long as I can remember. I've been an attorney for almost a decade now. The number of times that my voice has been commented on by well-meaning people, but be a little bit more softer, or here you want to you're gonna want to tone that down just a bit, or here you sound a little too assertive in this situation. Now it's all well-meaning, it's all well-intended, but what I know to be true about myself is that I am an advocate, and I have had the honor and the privilege of being trained in the law classically, but that does not mean that I need to strip down parts of myself or abandon pieces of me to conform to what system I'm working within.
You know what? Oh my God, you just said that was a loaded statement. The stripping down of self, though. Let's go there. Have you felt that you've had to do that?
Oh my God, Nikki, I can't even, that's another book I could write right there.
But would you say that it was something that was self-inflicted or peer externally inflicted? Not peer, but externally inflicted.
That's a question that it's an incredibly important question, and I don't know that I'm the right person to answer it, because
for you though, just for you.
Even for me, it's not fully clear. So they're not. I can't point to a single person, or, well, I guess if I really think about it, I could point to some times where it was certainly externally suggested that I should behave a different way, or speak a different way, or dress differently. That's absolutely true. But then I think it's like everything. There's small outside influences, and when we bring them in, we magnify them, we multiply them, we examine them, we dissect these comments about ourselves. And so it's exacerbated, because we're going, why was the way that I showed up not correct? And how do I correct that? And why didn't they like what I offered? Why didn't it resonate with them immediately? Why did they interpret what I said this way when I really meant it more this way? And so, yeah, there's tons of external influences. It wasn't that long ago that we were arguing about whether or not open-toed shoes were okay in court. Like, my God, give me a break.
This is recent?
Yeah. This was an issue that came up when I was in New York, probably 7 years ago now. Yeah. So it's little stuff like that, but it sticks with you, because you want to do the absolute best job that you can.
Yeah.
So when you're told that what you're doing isn't it, you really do. You bring it in, you hug it close, you go, oh my God, why am I not better? And so it's external. Certainly that there are real external influences, objectively speaking, but I think we make it worse because we want to be better.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned some of the things that can externally impact us. And we'll get to gender in a moment. But when we're talking about these external things, and because some of these rules are not even written as you were alluding to, but yet we buy in. I'm thinking, I used to think women specifically. I do believe men have their own level of that external influence. I truly do. But I think as women, we can find ourselves doubling down the more, because of all the other gender inequities that happen. So we're trying to push past those, yet while at the same time prove ourselves, while at the same time, balancing out this whole concept and idea and realization of imposter syndrome. And then I could just keep going on and on and on. And then we're trying to balance, because oftentimes it's, those of us female who are in the workplace have to almost, sometimes I think we're moving past that a little more, but Which do you want? Do you want family or do you want a career? And so we find ourselves in this tug of war, but like I said, I think we're pulling past it, but every now and then something happens, such as can you wear open toe shoes? That sets us back.
Oh my God, you are so correct. And I will say, just this summer, the American Bar Association journal, the ABA journal. So that's that for people who don't
Uh-huh.
obsess over our body as much as I do. The head representative policy administrative body for attorneys is the American Bar Association. I actually used to work there in DC. I was on the Human Rights Initiative. It's a very well respected body. They published an article that began with a female author stating unequivocally that the fastest way to derail a legal career is to explore motherhood. That just
Really?
happened this summer. Yeah. So we're not talking about. I mean, this isn't old stuff. It's brand new. It's still happening constantly.
Wow. Like what one thing would you have changed having been in the industry for the length of time and you've had different levels of exposure within this industry and contribution? What one thing would you have told yourself 5 years ago about the industry that you know now?
Oh Lord. Gosh, I think I would say keep showing up as yourself. Absolutely. There's a reason why we try to conform and mimic and imitate the people around us. There's a reason why we want to look the way that they do, sound the way that they do, put in the hours that they do, regardless of how unhealthy it can sometimes be. We want to prove ourselves, as you correctly spot on said earlier. We want to show we belong here. But my perspective now, and the wellness initiative that I'm working on now, is very much based around the idea that this profession is important. It's too important to be mechanical. The people that are here are not machines, and they shouldn't be, because we are not done perfecting this system. And it takes real people to really show up and say, hey, something's wrong here. We need to make it better. And so if I could tell myself, I would have been a couple years into the practice at that time, I would just say, look, hang in there, you're doing all right, and you go here already.
Yeah, and you raise a great point about the mechanicalism. I love that word. Not one I hear often, but we show up in that space all too often in regards to just cranking it out. We're just cranking it out. And if it's not cranking it out, we're on assembly line where we're doing our part to kind of toss it, pass it, receive it, toss it, pass it, receive it. And it's endless, because now we see companies doing more with less. And technology does help, but then there's still, we're still giving of ourselves. We're still giving of our time. And then we find ourselves normalizing and celebrating. Oh, I'm so tired. Oh my gosh, I don't have any time in the day. You want to meet? Krystal, you want to meet? Well, Krystal, if you want to meet, let me check my schedule. Oh my God, do you see this? It's just packed. We have normalized and celebrated that for so long, myself included, to where you didn't think you were accomplishing unless you were doing the most, being extra.com, as they say. But at the same time, I have a dear colleague, who's always says, if you take what you're giving and you spread it, the peanut butter factor, and you spread it across that bread too thin, guess what? You don't even taste the peanut butter, because it's just spread it so thin with what it is that we're trying to do, instead of having impact, which is another word that I heard you say. Yes. What are your thoughts about this normalizing, and now about to be a mom? How, what's your thoughts? How has that shifted for you?
Yes. Oh my God, what a fun topic. I love this. So the initiative that I'm working on is going to roll out this fall. It's called Hustle Less Law, right?
Oh,
We live
wow.
in hustle culture. Everything is do more, be more, show up more. And it's honestly, it's quite superficial. Like we wear our tiredness as a badge of honor. We constantly
Yeah.
tell people how busy we are,
Yeah.
and it's not impactful. It is, it's unhealthy a lot of times. And it's a little like, okay, you're super busy, I'm super busy, we're all really busy. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So I've been studying quite a bit of this lately. Why this happened, why it keeps happening, why we have this hustle culture, and where it came from. There's a phenomenal book called Do Nothing by Celeste Headley. I strongly encourage anyone
I'm
who
going to get that.
she's she is fantastic. She's done so many things it'd be impossible for me to do her resume justice. But if anyone's looking for a reference on how to separate worth as a person from your work or from your busy schedule, it's absolutely worth it. It also gives us a really good perspective on why we talk about ourselves and to other people the way that we do about busyness, how it's kind of a status symbol,
It's true.
and, and how it's very cultural. It's very American. It's very recent, which I didn't know. I thought people just always worked hard, right? Like my grandparents immigrated to this country. They started their own business. I grew up in one of those German families where all you talked about was how tired you were from working,
Yeah.
and it really was like if you're not tired, you probably should go do something to make yourself tired because you're not doing
And you
enough.
and you feel guilty, or you're led to feel guilty. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too, where is that external or is it something that we multiply for ourselves? Well, it's both, right? It's both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to I want to have meaningful relationships with my clients so that I can actually help them protect themselves and advocate for them in this system. I want to have a meaningful relationship with my daughter, my husband. I want to eat from my own kitchen as often as possible, which takes.
Come on, Krystal. Come on. You're hitting nerves. You're hitting nerves.
I know it's wishful thinking, and I'm a little naive, and it's not it's not a very sexy thing to say, but it makes such a difference for our health, for our attitudes, and it allows me to be me and to be impactful and powerful in what I'm doing. And to me, there really isn't much higher purpose than contributing with everything that I have. That doesn't mean 24/7 at all.
And then also being mindful that, while there are so many other things that we can get involved in, because that's another thing, like we have our role and where it is that we're working and we're contributing. But then, we've got these boards, we've got these committees that come off of the boards. Then we also have our volunteerism that we want to do. We have family, we've got babies on the way, all those different things. And it's like, how are you juggling it? But impact, quality over quantity, all these different things come into play. And then before you know it, and for me, I'm, having come off of a life-changing experience to where it's like there's a different appreciation for life. And you don't get certain time, we don't get that back. Once something has passed us, that is past. And so like yes, I'm the same way in regards to I'm wanting to cook more. I wanted to put a little garden in the window, and yes, it died the first time, but I'm like, I'm gonna try it again. Let me go to Trader Joe's and get some starter kits. But so you have those different things that I'm echoing what you were saying, but at the same time, we go to school, We get this debt, from going to school. So we almost feel like if we don't do what we, have this hustle, then was it all for naught? Did we just invest in ourselves in a way to where we invested so much, but yet we give up so much? If I can say that.
Oh yeah. And look, I don't mean that we should in any way really be less. I think you are more when you do less. And
Yeah.
so it's peanut butter, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, there is only, people underestimate how much focus we have. They underestimate how well, like we all overrate how well we function without sleep. For a long time, I told people I was
Oh my God.
4.5 or 5 hours of sleep. I was not fine. And it was
But that's honest. But that's honest. And that was one of those leadership accidents that we buy into. Because I too, I'm like, I needed to go get that bag, that a little leather bag. I needed to have my little iPad and laptop with me at all times. Like there's a whole persona we take on
yeah.
to and you think that's what it takes to move up, but I am learning, be very intentional about the projects, learn to say no internally of your whether it's career, some no to volunteerism, some no even to family sometimes, because we're trying to give, because what happens is we're like in this space of trying to give, but we're empty. We're empty, or we're trying to give and we've not even taken time to even get to know who we really are and what we really want. Just because you work 12 hours, 5 to 6 days a week, that doesn't mean that's what I need to be doing.
You're absolutely correct. There's so much in that has come to light for me. I've had significant struggles in this profession. I've overcome a great deal that I'm quite proud of, and I'm comfortable saying that, which is also new.
Yeah.
And refreshing.
I love it.
But, thank you. But look, if what we're doing when we're taking on everything, we're saying that everything is important, and that is bullshit. Pardon my French, but it's not. It's not equally important. There are priorities. There are needs. There are wants. There that sound kind of cool, but you don't really know how much you didn't want to do it until you start doing it, and that's fine. Try it, taste everything. But if we're not understanding that our success is something we get to define, and we're just running around doing everything for everyone, we're not doing anything for anyone. And when we are doing it, we're doing it in like the most minimally impactful way possible, because we don't have time to do anything else. And so we're not having these deeper connections. We're not making time for important conversations. We can see this,
and nor are we also blocked from, one thing for me I've learned, the appropriate follow-up and follow through.
Absolutely.
It's not possible when you're like constantly moving around the wheel. You never get a chance to jump off to even check the pulse of something.
Right. It's so true. And it's like, look, we have a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
And we've been conditioned to believe that we can make things more efficient, or we can hustle our way through. We can get a super cheap, super fast meal at the expense of our own nutritional value.
And that has impact. That has impact.
And it does, right? And that doesn't even get into how wonderful it is to actually spend a Saturday running through Tower Grove Farmers Market or Soulard, and then making them. That stuff, that's life. That's
it is
during the week, right? Like that's big stuff. Not not hopping on 10 or 20 Zoom meetings per month in order to show on my resume that I volunteer with 80 different organizations. That's
because
I'm not bringing my full self.
correct. And bringing your full self, I've learned over the past year. I know some found COVID, yes, COVID brought on many challenges, but many blessings in my world. And with that, the stillness, I realized that's when I actually can create. I can actually think clearer. I actually felt more whole and not fragmented. Minimal anxiety, because why? I've had a good night's rest. I've had some vegetables that were fresh, not out of a sodium filled can, not to knock it, but we've got to, as I say, everything in moderation. But it taught me, you have to actually, one strategy I am now operating in is to prioritize me and actually put it on the calendar. And also prioritize quiet time. Yes. And actually put it on my calendar. Block the time out. And it's already making a difference. Already making a difference.
So I mean, I go back to this saying all the time, and something I've been thinking about. Are we lagging a bit?
It was a little delay, yeah. Go ahead.
I got to know. Okay, yeah. Something that that I hear in wellness conversations all the time is put on your own air mask first, right? Yes. Fundamental rules of air travel. Put on your own air mask if we're going down. But here's the problem. We don't regularly see ourselves as like falling out of the sky in an airplane crash, right? So we think, well, I can just do everything for everyone else and then it'll be fine. But that's also like kind of not how it works, because there are things that you, regardless of catastrophe or other emergency, you do have to keep that oxygen going. Yeah. And so maybe because things are not regularly in terms of airplane crashes, you just don't view it that way. But maybe they should be, maybe that's the way to think about it. Like, you only got 5 hours of sleep last night, you're gonna crash and burn today, and that's that.
Wow. And speaking of prioritizing self, one thing I want to, I definitely don't want to miss is you taking on this space, even though this is not your first attempt at putting pen to paper, but living my truth, personal reflections on the impact of the RBG legacy. And those of us who are familiar with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was more than just a Supreme Court judge, but over her career, she was responsible for many of the benefits that we as working women, we are able to have access to, able to have the fluidity to flow through some of these things that were once barriers. Still much work to be done, but we celebrate her work for women in general. And so you had the opportunity to partner with Kathy Davis, which I'm familiar with Kathy Davis. I love her work, love her style of writing, love her coaching is what I was able to get from her and her team. And you penned a chapter. Tell us about this experience.
Yes, absolutely. So first off, kudos to Kathy Davis and the other phenomenal authors in this book. This was so much fun. We have a kind of the novel neighbor is selling our book right now. We're going to be there on Saturday. My chapter is called The Dissenter's Hope. It's an excerpt of a quote that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had stated in an interview when she was just kind of casually talking to a group of students. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg is kind of famous for her dissents. She's written some very powerful dissents. She has written some dissents that have directly attacked the structure of the legal system. She's written some controversial opinions, which I love. Like, I'm all here for that. So she spoke about why those dissents matter. And something she said was that, in short, I'm going to paraphrase here, that the reason for writing the dissent is not to say that I am right and you are wrong. It is not to say that I disagree and I should be heard about that. The reason you write the dissent is because sometimes our culture is not caught up to the promise of the law or the law's protections.
Wow.
And the dissent is there as a placeholder in history so that future generations can rely on it, use the work, look to the dissenter as somewhat of a guiding light for how the law might change and catch up with what we need it to do.
Wow.
And I thought, I look to that almost every day. So when people come to their attorneys, you probably know this, it's not usually on their best day.
Right.
When people come, when people are engaging in a lawsuit, when they need to hire an attorney, typically something pretty bad has happened. So you become emotionally invested when you care about your clients, as I think you should. You share things. They share things with you that they haven't really shared with even the people closest to them, and they're looking to you to help them right a wrong.
Yes.
We have a very imperfect legal system. It fails people much more often than it should. It does not live up to the structures that were created hundreds of years ago. It certainly doesn't live up to the way that we understand that they should be today. And so losses really hurt. When you think you're right, when you give it all you got, when you give up some of that precious time with your family and your sleep so that you can advocate for someone who's been harmed, you don't win every time. Nobody does. And that can be really devastating, and it stays with you for a long time, especially when it's a system failure and you did everything that you could and the system just does not work in favor of the client that you think it should. So the dissenter's hope is my way of taking those inspiring words from Ruth Bader Ginsburg and saying, stick with it. It's important. Wow. Even if you don't get what you want today, we still have work to do. So let's keep working.
Wow. That is most powerful, regardless what industry that we may find ourselves in. The fact that we need to keep going, but also just the manner in which you articulated the dissents and how she cast these dissents not to cause turmoil, but to, I'll say, stir the pot a little bit, but also remind us. And then I love how you wove in the fact that future generations, that is so powerful in so many ways because there's a call of action, even while she was working. So there's so much in what you've said that we all can take along. What is it that we are dissenting? What is it that we are doing, even when it comes to the system? How are we contributing? How are we using our voices to advocate? How are we resting and eating healthy so that we can have what's needed to come out and stand and advocate for someone who may not be able to in certain circumstances and situations? We have a host of things that's happening around the world today that could use individual shining light upon them. But I love how you say it may not go the way that you want it to, but it doesn't mean stop. That's powerful. And we are the ones called for this season. You are the one that's called for this season. I mean, to even remind us that we've got work to do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And you're absolutely right. This isn't a legal issue, right? For me,
No,
it's a
yeah.
legal issue. This is the work I want to do,
Uh-huh.
but it spans industries. It spans time. My the power that theory had for me was almost it was almost listening to this icon of a human, Justice Ginsburg, say, look, I can't take on this system by myself, but I
Yeah.
will give you, some ways to consider what might be done in the future. And so I thought, oh my God, you can look at it one of two ways. You can go, well, if Justice
Mhm.
Ginsburg thought she couldn't take on the system, then what in the world am I doing? Or you can say, maybe I only have like a teaspoon instead of a shovel. Certainly don't have a bulldozer or a backhoe or anything, but well, I'm still here. I'm still digging, and we need to keep going.
Yeah, and as you were saying, she basically, well, she set a path though. And the path that she's like tickle because sometimes when people will say, oh my gosh, those who are more seasoned will say, you young people have it so easy. Like we didn't even have technology. We didn't have computers. So I'm thinking of it also from that framework in regards to Justice um, Bader. Bader Ginsburg, she had so much to offer and to give that was so before her time in a sense, but yet in her time with the tools she had and still was able to map out, carve out, dig out, and so many other outs to make it better for Krystal and those who graduated before you and those who will come after you. And then we have these little reminders along the way because she's passed the baton, to the next generation, as you mentioned in your interpretation of her work. And I think that is amazing, but it stops me right now to go back to how we started this conversation in this moment. Um, how we have all these different things going on and we've normalized all this craziness and busyness and hustle. Um, and there, I'm not saying that we don't need to have a sense of urgency, but we do need to have a sense of readiness and preparedness to fight, to dig, to move forward, to stand in the gap, all those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, it's counterintuitive because of the way that we think as a culture and the way
Mhm.
that we value ourselves or the way that we perceive our own value. But the point of the dissenter's hope, in my interpretation, is very much that our time here is valuable and the work that we're doing in all of our
Mhm.
respective fields is valuable. And we have to find ways to continue to fuel that hope. Because if we
That's the word right there. Ah, fuel the hope.
fuel it, power it up, keep it close to you, don't let it burn out because burnout is a real thing,
Yeah.
exhaustion is a real thing.
Yeah.
And so if we don't do these things that we know continue to allow us to get that oxygen in spite of
Yeah.
the plane crash, our hope only takes us so far because
Yeah.
we can have all these wonderful ideals, but if you're exhausted, if you're not getting the proper nutrition, if you're
Yeah.
not spending time moving your body, you can only hope your way so far into your work, right? There's
Yeah.
more to it. So,
Yeah.
so find what fuels your hope in all respects, physical, mental, emotional, and use it to drive you forward.
Yeah, you mentioned fueling I love this, fueling the hope, fueling the fire. And the work that you do is heavy. It's heavy lifting. And I'm sure there have been occasions, maybe just a few, in which you felt you needed help or um, new strategies to actually do just that for yourself. As we turn the spotlight back on you, in going inward, what is it that fuels you, or and what tools can you share with us that have been useful for you?
Sure, sure. This is a new topic for me. I am exploring this in real time. So I have found
Awesome.
that you can only run so long on black coffee. That is not the only substance that will, yeah, I made it years with that as like a primary part of my diet, and I will tell you that it takes more. So
Yeah.
right now, um, writing. I love writing. I'm having a lot of fun working on some fiction manuscripts. It's a cool way to
Awesome.
take some of these massive issues and make them fun and give the real problems to fictional characters.
Okay.
I do really enjoy cooking. Um, I very much enjoy spending time with my husband, and more than anything else, real substantive conversations with people who give a darn. That fuels me. That is
Yeah.
that there's nothing better. Like, let's talk about it. Let's think about solutions. Tell me about your experiences. Where has that brought you? And what do you know that I haven't lived yet? I
Yeah. And having that exchange is, I always say, the iron sharpening the iron. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you're right. Like I'm sitting here thinking, and it's like, okay, what was my last meaningful conversation? So I've been having intentionally have been having more. So I can go straight to when the last one, which was just today. Um, but I get what you're saying in regards to um, conversations of substance. Um, and yeah, and sometimes just listening. I know one thing I enjoy doing. I'm like poking into your time, but
no.
listening to see, like, I'm fascinated. Like, I've always been fascinated, but I think I'm more fascinated now to hear from those who are more seasoned than I am.
Sure, sure.
And it allows me to have a greater appreciation for some things I can think just should be. We take for granted that it was not always that way for everyone. And just in a very grateful space for even just access, even just this, being able to do this, and but to learn, it's not, always, having the most to say, but to sit and learn, just to be a sponge. And I think that is not valued as much as it used to be, because grandmas are not the same, grandpas are not the same
Yes.
as they were when I was growing up. So I have some adopted grandparents.
You have to. You have to. Yeah, I think, okay, so beyond this whole concept, exactly in line with what you're saying, but what we give up when we are constantly hustling, when we're constantly moving around, keeping ourselves busy, is those real connections. Like that's at the root of
Yeah.
it. We lose it. For me, it's losing those connections with my clients because it's faster to email them. It's you lose negotiation power because you don't want to call the other attorney and discuss the real issue and say, okay, can we meet maybe a little bit closer on this issue, because all these issues aren't equal.
Okay.
And then in my real life, outside of all of that, it's the, what is the impact? What is the,
Yeah.
what are the experiences that we all share? And then what's different, right? Like, what do we need? What do I need to know in order to broaden my horizons, to enhance my
Yeah.
perspective? And yes, the conversations, the grandparents, absolutely. I was fortunate enough to have my most of mine around until I was a teenager. My mother's mother is still living,
Oh, what a
so
blessing.
conversations are, oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The, the
Good.
conversations, the human connection, you cannot get that in a cheaper, faster, more efficient way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that being said from you lands different because you're in the space of communication and exchange of all kinds. And it's probably constant, I'm assuming. And to hear you talk about, even though you're in the, I mean, that is your world, to hear you say communication is still something that we need to value and make time for, not stumble upon, is what I'm hearing. Um, Says, whoa, like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Something on this line of thought here, something that we
Mhm.
really sacrificed here in St. Louis during the pandemic were our jury trials. And juries are an
Oh,
interesting thing because if you're a criminal defendant, you, for the most part, have the right to a jury trial. That has
okay.
been there since, it's been there since the drafting of the Constitution and it included in the Bill of Rights. It is something you have a right to confront people who have accused you. And I think that that's really powerful because that human connection, that human interaction is something that even the founders of this country, albeit sometimes misguided, believed would actually be the pinnacle of truth and would get us to somewhere where we can say, hey, we are now able to sit in judgment of this other person because we've connected with them, we've seen them, we've brought them here to court. And so yeah,
And
whether,
heard their point of view.
yes, they were heard, they
Yeah.
were seen, they were
Yeah.
listened to, all those things.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there is real, there is, long before our Constitution was drafted, people did recognize the power of storytelling and human connection and conversation, and I think it's one of the most substantive ways that we can connect with our world.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving forward, what one thing do you think you will be more intentional about incorporating in your work, whether that be as a lawyer, an author, a mom, all of that? What one thing will you be most intentional about?
I will be most intentional about the way that my work is heard by others.
Okay.
So sometimes we can say things that we think sound entirely innocent or joking, or um, we don't need to we don't need to necessarily shift who we are, but understanding that our words are powerful and have
Mhm.
a real effect on real people, and becoming more even more sensitive and more educated about those issues.
Okay. Okay. Now, one thing that you definitely want to get your hands involved in that you're not doing right now.
Ooh, fun. Um, I haven't worked in civil rights space in a few years, and
Okay.
that was the most meaningful work that I have had the privilege of being involved in. And I'd like to get back involved with that. I don't know that it'll be through litigation again,
Okay.
but maybe through advocacy or policy work.
Okay. Wonderful. So you have the chance to go forward 5 years, what one thing in your industry would you like to see changed?
I would like there to be more respect for the people who are in this work, not just the attorneys, but everyone involved with it, the courthouse staff, the paralegals. I would like to see it be filled with people who want to do this work,
Yeah.
and are treated with the kind of corresponding attitude that goes with that.
Okay. You have the platform to communicate one message in the nick of time to an emerging attorney, female or male. What one thing would you tell them and why?
Do not check your passion at the door. Bring it with you, keep it close, no matter what message you get that takes away from it, or, God forbid you be told you're emotional, keep it. It matters, it's important, and it will fuel you through this.
Wow. Don't leave your passion at the door. I've never heard that. It's always leave your emotions at the door. Very interesting.
Yeah, no.
So
I'm not doing that anymore either.
No, and I too, that's why I'm like, wow, this is, again, all that you, yes, we are talking to you and you, it's all centered around law, but hear me when I say, I don't care what the industry is, you have dropped so many jewels and nuggets for us to really take in and process and consider regardless of industry. So I am just most appreciative to you for that. Very, very appreciative.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, where can individuals learn more about Krystal, and where can they find you and also get this book?
Yes. Okay. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. If you want to hear my 3 a.m. ramblings, you can find me on Twitter. Easy to track me down at the Bistate Law Center. And our book can be purchased at the Novel Neighbor here in St. Louis. It can be purchased through Amazon, although if you can find it locally, I strongly encourage you to. And it can be purchased through Target.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And the book is Living My Truth, Personal Reflections on the Impact of the RBG Legacy. And Krystal has a chapter, The Dissenter's Hope. I know I see it in the background. I love it. Krystal, thank you so much for this time. This is not going to be the last time. Again, as you begin to move forward in this writing, because I know this is just the beginning. Once you get our previous conversations, let me know that you have been bit by the bug. So I know there's going to be some more writing coming. So I look forward to hearing about this writing, but also all the other work that you're doing. So again, thank you so much for the time.
Nikki, thank you so much for inviting me to the conversation. It was always an absolute joy to get to speak with you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Again, we want to welcome and thank Ms. Krystal. That's our little chimer, Krystal Weigl, for joining us. And congratulations, mom to be. You have to send us pictures once she gets here.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you for giving us your listening ear. And we hope that we place something on your mind and also some tools in your hands so that you can go and be great in every way. Want to make sure that you don't forget you already have everything you need to be successful. It's just a matter of you defining it and then tapping into it. Want to thank KSTL 690 AM for their support and sponsorship. Also, Sparkman Pathway to Careers and Covenant Exchange, LLC. I am your host, Nikki Roach, and we do thank you for joining us for another segment of Conversations in the Nick of Time.